Hello, 2025 Fordham Quant Conference attendees. I'm sorry I couldn't make it, but I'm based in Germany. I've just written a new book called Data Impact, and I think you're going to love it as a quant. So Data Impact is focused on legacy non-software native businesses and how they can apply my SLASOG framework, my 6-step framework, to create value in the data-driven paradigm. So the core thesis is that non-software native businesses are industrial businesses that were born in the industrial paradigm. Think Adam Smith, think supply side, think optimization of processes, resource constraints, etc. And that they have really been struggling through the late 90s, the early 2000s, the move to the digital paradigm. And they've been struggling even more in the last decade or so, where we've seen business models that are purely data-driven. Now, this is definitely important and relevant to everyone because most of our economy, most of our lives, most of our society is made up of non-software native businesses because we still live in the world of atoms. And the reason why they're struggling is because the way I frame the setting is that there are three very clear value creation paradigms. The first one is the oldest one in this case is the industrial value creation paradigm. And the industrial value creation paradigm has two features that are important. One is that replication costs are relatively constant, right? Which means if you take, a paperback or if you take a coffee mug or whatever other industrial product, if you want to make one more, you're going to have relatively the same cost every time, relatively constant costs across time. And you also have constant personalization costs. So, if you're trying to write every customer's name on the cup, right? Or if you're trying to dedicate a personalized chapter to every person in your book, right, in your paperback, that's going to have, relatively constant costs too. What changes massively in what I call the digital paradigm is where replication costs essentially go to zero, right? So we're talking basically going from a paperback to an ebook. And what happens there is you don't need all that paper. You don't need that complex supply chain. You don't need all the machinery and labor you need to produce a physical book, right? But you still have relatively constant personalization costs. And once you move into the data-driven digital paradigm, and the personalization costs also go towards zero. The reason why a lot of industrial businesses are struggling is because if you go at value creation with an industrial mindset in the data-driven digital paradigm, you're wearing like sunglasses at night, right? It's a completely different value creation paradigm. And so the book features a dozen different playbooks of legacy businesses that have succeeded. It shows how, irrespective of what your context is, you can think from first principles to win in the data-driven paradigm. So there's a whole bunch of practical examples that you'll find useful. There's a whole bunch of frameworks that you'll find useful that help you think through improving decision making and helping you understand basically the power law that we're seeing develop across legacy sectors and legacy businesses, because there are very few of them that are just creating disproportionate amount of value. And I think as a quant, if you want to model systematic strategies around evaluating these businesses, you just have to go beyond the traditional sort of finance accounting metrics, right? And you have to start thinking about a new set of quantifiable metrics around how to measure the value creation these businesses are able to generate. And so from that perspective, I think you're going to enjoy the book. The other perspective is if you try to apply my 6-step SLASOG framework to your own business. And the 6-step in SLASOG are save, leverage, align, simplify, optimize, and grow. And so the idea is irrespective of what you're trying to do, the first step is you want to focus on outcomes, not activity. I think the nice thing in the markets is the feedback is brutal. I started my career as a trader. And so if you're wasting resources, if you're not working on your highest impact opportunities, the market will very quickly give you that feedback. So I think you don't have to worry too much about that. But I think before you start doing anything, it's always good to take a step back and think from first principles about the value you're trying to create and then cut out all the wastage. And that allows you to save money, resources, etc., that you can invest And that brings us to the next step, which is leverage. So that allows you to kind of invest all of that kind of capital in the broadest sense that you've saved into your few leveraged opportunities. Right? So the idea is to identify the two or three things that you can structure as asymmetric bets that are going to allow you to create disproportionate value with very limited downside. And then the third step then is align, where you want to align everything and everyone to achieving these two or three leveraged opportunities, right? These two or three leveraged asymmetric bets. And then once you've done that, then you want to simplify, right? So what you end up seeing is over time complexity increases, irrespective of whatever organization, process, business, whatever you're doing. Complexity just grows over time, and the reason for that is no one wakes up and says, hey, let's create new complexity. The reason why complexity grows over time is because complexity is born through problem solving, right? So your systematic strategy breaks down somewhere, someone tries to fix it, some data signal gets too noisy, someone tries to fix that, and over time all of these, all of that duct tape that you correctly use to problem solve ends up accumulating to a point where the cost of complexity weighs down on you, and eventually that leads to collapse. And so the simplify step is all about thinking from first principles around, hey, how do you look at the system you're operating in, right, from your leveraged asymmetric bets perspective, and kind of remove all the clutter that's essentially increasing costs and reducing your returns. And once you've done that, right, now you're ready to optimize the setup you're operating with, as well as understand the environment you're operating in. And the way I argue you should do that is by developing a mathematically optimizable, empirically valid model of the world, right? Of the world you're operating in, of your business, but also your environment and how they interact. And all of this is to grow.